people have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses, regardless of skin color. People marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist.
When Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher joined forces to roast The View, it wasn't just a takedown. It was a full-scale comedic assault. Forget jabs. These two unleashed punchlines like precision-guided missiles. Gutfeld called out the double standards, and Maher followed up with razor-sharp wit that scorched the set. If you thought midday talk shows were tame, think again. This wasn't daytime drama. It was primetime demolition. And trust us, the teleprompter never saw it coming. Buckle up. This roast doesn't wait for commercial breaks. Want a more sarcastic or serious tone?
And by the way, out there, that hat that you keep wearing, that red hat that says "Make America Great Again," that tells people that you go along with this. So you might as well just put a swastika on the hat.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Because we see it anyway.
I'm not going to defend Donald Trump ever, but I would never say that we should put this on the cap, because I think you can hate Donald Trump. You can't hate everybody who likes him. It's half the country. I don't want to live in that country. I don't want to live in the country where I hate half the country, and I don't hate half the country.
How do you disagree?
The View. That never-ending carousel of chaos, hot takes, and caffeinated clapbacks. A talk show by title, but more like a full-blown circus where nuance goes to die and reasons on an indefinite leave of absence. Drop a rocket scientist into that circle, and within 5 minutes they're crying into their latte, stunned that truth has somehow become the villain of the hour. But hold on to your seat. Two wild cards just entered the fray. Enter Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher, unlikely allies and walking proof that even in the land of Bedlam, strange bridges can still be built. Would you like it even sharper or more satirical?
Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
One's a conservative fire starter who speaks like his coffee's laced with pure sarcasm. The other's a liberal iconoclast who treats woke culture like it's a virus he's already immune to. When Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher team up to roast The View, it's not just commentary. It's performance art with teeth. Think sharks circling a sinking ship, then sinking their teeth in anyway, just for fun. Gutfeld, Fox's resident jester, has made View roasting practically a personal ritual. At this point, it's less critique and more seasonal tradition. Want to add more bite or balance the tone?
Joy Behar calls her a 10. I mean, how dare she objectify a woman with a rating system, but it's such a typical thing from a 1.5.
Well said.
Panel says something absurd. Greg hears it, rolls his eyes so hard it causes a minor shift in atmospheric pressure, then launches into a verbal suplex aimed squarely at daytime TV's most fragile echo chamber. His beef? The View sells itself as a debate, but it's more like 5 voices competing in a harmony of confusion, each convinced they alone occupy the moral high ground. Gutfeld once joked that watching The View is like being stuck in a group project where no one read the book, but everyone's convinced they wrote it. He takes aim at Joy Behar's uncanny ability to rewrite history in real time. Sunny Hostin's marathon sessions of "I'm right because I said so," and Whoopi Goldberg's baffling evolution into morning TV's most bewildered philosopher. Want this pushed even further into satire or trimmed for a tighter punch?
Joy Behar gets racism after all. She's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brand Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast.
According to Greg Gutfeld, The View isn't a talk show. It's more like a group therapy session where the therapist keeps storming out in exasperation. Guests, just moving targets in a firing range of preloaded opinions. Beneath the snark and stingers, Gutfeld's core message cuts through. The View has stopped being a place for debate and turned into a self-congratulatory echo chamber where dissent isn't discussed, it's disqualified. Dialogue? Forget it. You're not invited to share ideas, you're summoned to confess. And if, by some miracle, you survive the eye rolls, the muttered asides, and the occasional theatrical sigh, your reward is maybe, just maybe, half a sentence without interruption. Then there's Gutfeld's take on their version of inclusivity. He describes it as about as inviting as a Siberian snowstorm. The moment a conservative walks onto the set, the mood shifts from let's discuss to let's dismantle. Gutfeld doesn't bother with euphemisms. He calls it performance activism. Broadway without the charm, just brighter lights and more aggressive eyebrows. And the unsung hero of the whole spectacle? Not Joy, not Whoopi. It's the poor teleprompter operator, silently praying the segment ends before the next half-baked monologue sets Twitter ablaze. But the kicker? Gutfeld's theory that the View exists in a parallel media universe, one where facts are strained through feelings and logic gets judged by volume. To him, watching the show is like scrolling through a Twitter thread that got its own camera crewed by mistake. And honestly, he might be onto something. One more neutral version or keep this tone going.
Obviously, just the part that you said. Did I watch a whole episode of The View?
No woman can do that unless you're stupid. But
I have a job.
here's the thing. How can they call themselves progressives when they keep saying that nothing has progressed? Then it's on them.
Just when you think the roast couldn't get any hotter, in strolls Bill Maher, the guy who's basically built a vacation home on Mount Contrarian and hosts weekend retreats where the hors d'oeuvres are truth bombs. If Gutfeld is the long-range sniper taking out hypocrisy with sniper-level precision, Maher's the one who kicks down the front door, grinning, with a detonator in hand. He's that rare kind of liberal who scares other liberals. Pro-weed, pro-free speech, and passionately anti-BS, no matter which side is surrogate. So when even Maher starts throwing shade at The View, you know they've long since passed the point of no return. His main gripe? Their absolute allergy to nuance. Maher's take is that The View doesn't just avoid disagreement, it treats it like an existential crisis. Say something even slightly off script, and boom. You're not just wrong, you're problematic, misogynistic, or, his personal favorite, unenlightened. According to Maher, it's less a conversation and more of a clinical diagnosis. Speak your mind, and they'll scribble out a prescription for public shame, followed by a swift Twitter cancellation. He's openly mocked their performative outrage, their addiction to moral high ground, and their uncanny ability to turn a mild disagreement into a five-alarm ideological inferno. Want this paired with a satirical closer that ties Maher and Gutfeld's tag team together?
Well, I had a different question, but it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're.
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected. So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and baptized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and so
migrate.
why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing.
Watching The View, Bill Maher argues it's like stumbling into a fire drill where everyone's screaming, and somehow it's all your fault the alarm went off. And Maher doesn't just skim the surface, he dives headfirst into the chaos. He skewers the hosts for quoting headlines from articles that clearly never finished, for speaking in hashtags instead of full thoughts, and for mistaking emotional volume for actual argument. While Gutfeld accuses the show of faking diversity of thought, Maher takes it further, accusing them of faking intellectual curiosity altogether. His critiques come wrapped in a smirk and a sigh, like he's saying, really? This is where the bar is now? When a show gets so predictable, you can call every reaction before it happens. Maher stops calling it a panel and starts calling it tribal theater with coffee mugs. And here's the twist. Gutfeld and Maher, two guys who couldn't agree on the color of the sky if you handed them a paint swatch, somehow landed on the same page. And that page reads, The View has unintentionally become a comedy show. Just not the kind with laughs, more like one where the punchlines think they're prophets. To both of them, The View isn't a round table anymore. It's political performance art, dressed up as conversation, where every topic is a five-alarm crisis and every solution involves a group hug. laced with a few passive-aggressive jabs. Want this closed with a final punch or left open-ended?
What we go over, because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So everybody was like, "Oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma." First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week. It's easy. But there is no thing as karma, okay? Get over that.
Gutfeld and Maher agree. Asterisk. The View Asterisk's audience has been trained to react like it's WWE, just with coffee mugs and cue cards. And perhaps the funniest or saddest part. They both note that The View has become the one place where holding a different opinion feels riskier than walking on set without makeup. Gutfeld calls it ideological theater. Maher, never one to miss a punchline, dubs it a culty brunch with commercial breaks. And the truth is, they're both dead on, which is precisely why the hosts couldn't stand it. When the clips went viral, you could practically see the steam rising from their mugs. The few attempts they made to clap back fizzled. More glitter bomb than mic drop. Loud, defensive, and hilariously off target. They didn't address the criticism, they danced around it. But the internet? It caught every frame. And in a rare cultural moment, viewers from both sides of the aisle found themselves laughing in sync. Why? Because it rang true. The View, in all its polished podium-pounding certainty, had finally become the very thing it constantly claims to stand against. Predictable, performative, and painfully out of touch. The fallout wasn't surprising, just awkwardly inevitable. Want a sharp closing line to cap it all?
Old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill Maher, who has been the standard bearer for liberalism and in many ways leftism until the woke went bananas in this last decade, but for decades, that's what this guy has represented in America. I want you to note the tone they all talk with him. I want you to look at Sonny Huston's body language and the way they look at him and everything else.
Suddenly, the show went quiet. No rebuttals, no reflection, just strained smiles and a hasty pivot, like they hadn't just been served a 5-course roast with a flaming side of truth. It was the kind of moment where someone had clearly dropped a mirror in the middle of the table, and every host pretended it wasn't there. And here's the delicious irony. The very show that prides itself on tough conversations completely folded the moment two outsiders actually had one. Gutfeld and Maher didn't come in swinging with malice. They brought satire, sharp wit, and a few inconvenient facts. The View responded not with strength or self-awareness, but with silence, ducking under the table and hoping the ratings wouldn't notice. But the audience did, because when a Fox News firebrand and a liberal comedian roast your credibility in perfect sync, it doesn't feel like an attack, it feels like an intervention. Loud, unapologetic, and let's be honest, wildly entertaining. And that's the bigger takeaway. This wasn't just a roast of a daytime talk show. It was a spotlight on what happens when a platform stops exploring and starts preaching. When it trades real dialogue for applause lines. When it forgets that disagreement isn't a threat to democracy, it is democracy. Gutfeld and Maher may never see eye to eye on politics, policy, or even pizza toppings. But in that one blazing moment, they landed on the same undeniable truth. The View has lost the plot, and the script they're still clinging to, it belongs in the recycling bin, right next to the cue cards they didn't need because, let's face it, they're all reading the same line anyway. Would you like this repackaged as an article, op-ed, or video script?
Canada, apparently they're throwing tariffs on manatee meat and bovine semen, which means The View is very unhappy. Oh.
So, if The View ever wants to be taken seriously again, maybe it's time to invite dissent. Not as a prop, not as window dressing, but as actual dialogue. Because when your sharpest critics are consistently funnier, more insightful, and more coherent than your own panel, it might be time to turn down the volume and turn up the thinking. Substance over sound bites, conversation over confirmation. Radical idea, sure, but don't hold your breath. Because the only thing louder than The View's applause for itself is the deafening silence that follows any real pushback. And if you think Gutfeld and Maher are finished with their long-range roast sessions, think again. They may never grab beers together, but they found common ground in a shared opponent. Let's just say, The View won't be sending them holiday invites anytime soon. When the clowns start calling out the circus, you know the tent's in trouble. This is where the whole spectacle folds in on itself, both beautifully and tragically. When the court jesters start sounding like the only sane ones in the room, it's a sure sign the headliners have lost the plot. And these aren't anonymous trolls or fringe critics shouting from the sidelines. This is Greg Gutfeld, who practically breathes sarcasm on Fox News, and Bill Maher, a liberal icon who's roasted Republicans like it's sport. Yet somehow, both of them looked at The View and said the same thing. Yeah, that's too much. Let that settle. Let it marinate. Would you like this shaped into a polished op-ed or formatted for a spoken word performance?